Walt Disney was born into a world that felt ordinary and sometimes difficult. Yet his mind immediately reached far beyond muddy roads and small-town routines, constantly imagining places where stories could move, sing, and smile back at the viewer. Growing up in the American Midwest, surrounded by farms, newspapers, and hard-working parents, Walt learned early that effort mattered, but imagination could quietly transform effort into something magical. As a boy, he drew endlessly, not because anyone demanded it, but because lines and characters seemed eager to escape his pencil before they disappeared from his thoughts. School often bored him, while doodling animals, exaggerated faces, and playful scenes kept him awake and curious even on the longest days. Money was rarely plentiful, which taught Walt resilience, patience, and an unusual mix of optimism and stubborn determination that would later shape his career. He delivered newspapers at dawn, worked jobs that paid little, and still found time to sketch whenever possible, as if creativity were fuel rather than a luxury. Walt's fascination with motion began when he discovered that drawings did not need to remain frozen, because with enough persistence, pictures could appear to breathe. Early animation felt clumsy and experimental, yet Walt treated every mistake as a clue rather than a failure. He dreamed of characters who felt alive, who reacted emotionally, and who invited audiences to care deeply rather than simply watch. After early business failures that nearly crushed his ambitions, Walt learned one of his most important lessons, which was that setbacks could become foundations if rebuilt creatively. Moving westward, carrying hope more than money, Walt searched for a place where ideas could grow larger than fear. In small studios with limited tools, he worked tirelessly with partners who shared his belief that stories deserve movement and heart. The creation of Mickey Mouse did not arrive suddenly, but emerged slowly from trial, frustration, and a refusal to surrender imagination to disappointment. Mickey's cheerful confidence, playful courage, and expressive emotions reflected Walt's own determination to remain hopeful despite uncertainty. Audiences responded immediately because Mickey felt friendly, familiar, and reassuring during times when the real world felt unpredictable. Sound transformed animation completely, and Walt embraced it not as a gimmick, but as an opportunity to deepen emotion and storytelling. Music, rhythm, and motion blended into a new cinematic language that spoke directly to audiences of all ages. Walt believed animation deserved the same respect as live-action film, even when critics doubted its seriousness or longevity. He pushed his teams relentlessly, not from cruelty, but from belief that unseen potential demanded effort to be revealed. Color entered his films carefully and deliberately, adding warmth, depth, and emotion that expanded storytelling possibilities. Walt understood that stories needed structure, clarity, and heart to remain memorable. Fairy tales attracted him because they balanced wonder and danger, innocence and growth, fear and hope. With each new project, Walt raised expectations, refusing to repeat himself simply because success made repetition comfortable. Snow White represented a gamble so risky that many predicted failure. Yet Walt trusted emotion more than prediction. The film proved that animation could sustain deep narrative, emotional weight, and lasting cultural impact. Success did not quiet Walt's ambition because curiosity never allows rest for long. He imagined entire worlds where audiences could physically step inside stories rather than merely watch them unfold. Attention to detail became a guiding principle, shaping not only films, but experiences. Walt believed that imagination should feel welcoming, immersive, and emotionally honest. While critics sometimes misunderstood his optimism, audiences sensed sincerity beneath the surface charm. Behind the cheerful images existed constant problem-solving, planning, and relentless improvement. Walt balanced dreamer and builder roles, constantly translating fantasy into carefully engineered reality. His studio evolved into a creative ecosystem where artists, musicians, engineers, and storytellers collaborated intensely. Mistakes were dissected, improved, and repurposed rather than hidden. Walt encouraged innovation even when results felt uncertain. He believed children deserved quality storytelling rather than simplification. Adults, too, found themselves quietly moved by stories meant for younger eyes. Through animation, Walt explored fear, bravery, kindness, and perseverance without heavy explanations. He trusted visual storytelling to communicate emotion clearly and gently. By the time audiences worldwide recognized his name, Walt remained focused on what could still be improved. Comfort never satisfied him because imagination always pointed forward. Walt Disney was not simply building cartoons, but constructing a new relationship between stories and audiences. His vision expanded steadily, fueled by confidence earned through experimentation rather than certainty. The world he imagined was only beginning to take shape, and the journey ahead would grow far larger, more complex, and more influential than anyone yet realized. As Walt Disney's reputation grew, his ideas expanded even faster because success did not feel like a finish line to him, but rather a wider road demanding bigger risks and bolder imagination. He began thinking beyond individual films, imagining worlds where stories surrounded people completely, shaping not only what they watched, but how they felt as they walked, listened, and explored. This vision confused many adults who struggled to understand why cartoons should become physical spaces, yet Walt believed stories deserved to be lived, not merely observed. When Disneyland first took shape, it was not just a park, but a carefully designed experience where every path, sound, and structure supported a shared emotional journey. Critics doubted the idea, worrying it was too expensive, too strange, or too ambitious, but Walt trusted curiosity more than caution. He walked construction sites daily, pointing, adjusting, and imagining, because details mattered deeply to someone who believed magic relied on precision. Disneyland opened as a bold experiment, imperfect yet alive, filled with laughter, wonder, and the unmistakable feeling of possibility. Families did not simply ride attractions, but stepped into stories shaped by movement, music, and memory. The park reflected recognizing Walt's belief that imagination felt strongest when shared across generations. Yet even as crowds grew, Walt was already imagining something larger, because curiosity never allows a dreamer to remain still for long. He dreamed of communities designed with creativity, order, and optimism, where technology supported human happiness. Television became another storytelling tool, allowing Disney's characters and ideas to enter homes everywhere. Through shows and specials, Walt spoke directly to audiences, explaining ideas with enthusiasm and warmth rather than authority. Children saw a friendly guide, while adults sensed quiet confidence guiding every word. Behind the scenes, pressure increased as expectations rose higher with each success. Walt carried responsibility heavily, balancing finances, creativity, and leadership under constant scrutiny. Stress followed him closely, though he often hid exhaustion behind forward motion and humor. Even during difficult moments, he returned to planning, sketching, and imagining future projects. Health challenges slowly emerged, yet he refused to slow his pace significantly. Walt believed purpose itself created energy, pushing him forward despite physical strain. His final years focused less on individual characters and more on systems where creativity could continue beyond him. He built structures, teams, and philosophies designed to outlive any single person. Walt understood stories were temporary, but imagination could be taught, preserved, and renewed. When he died in 1966, the world paused, unsure how creativity, so closely tied to one mind, could continue. Yet what followed proved his greatest achievement was not a character, film, or park. The ideas he planted kept growing, guided by the principles he had lived by. Disney's worlds expanded across countries, cultures, and generations. Children who never met Walt still felt his presence through stories shaped by wonder and warmth. Artists learned from his bravery, persistence, and refusal to accept limits quietly. Critics continued debating his legacy, yet audiences returned repeatedly to his creations. Walt Disney became a symbol not of perfection, but of possibility. He showed that imagination could be organized, protected, and shared without losing its spark. Failure in his story became instruction rather than defeat. Optimism served not as denial of difficulty, but as determination to move forward anyway. Walt's life teaches that creativity thrives best when paired with discipline and courage. He believed joy deserved thoughtful construction rather than accident. Through animation, parks, and storytelling systems, he reshaped how people interact with imagination. His legacy lives wherever stories invite participation rather than passive watching. Every laugh, gasp, and moment of wonder echoes choices made decades earlier. Walt reminds us that dreaming alone is not enough without effort to build. He encourages children to imagine boldly, while reminding adults not to forget how. Through carefully drawn lines and carefully built worlds, he changed how stories travel. Imagination in Walt's hands became architecture. And even now, when lights dim and music begins, his vision quietly invites us inside. Because Walt Disney never simply created entertainment. He created doors and trusted the world to step through them.